so we got another big division matchup this week for the Lions as they're playing host to the Vikings to end a 2-game series against Minnesota this year. Of course, the Lions, we played the Vikings earlier this year in week 3, and we lost that game to the Vikings in a very heartbreaking loss. So now we get a chance of redemption against the Vikings. So let's get into this week. This preview is not going to be as long as before since all the key players I went over on the Vikings, I went over them in week 3. So if you want to know the Vikings key players for sure, detailed description, just go back to my week 3 preview and you'll find out there and then come back. But yeah, anyway, let's go into this game. So of course on Minnesota, they now lead the all-time series over Detroit 80-42. And here's the interesting thing about the point spread. Because the point spread's been over the place. Because as of this recording, the current point spread for this game has Detroit favored over Minnesota by 2.5 points. So around 3 points. Which I find very fucking surprising. That Vegas isn't favoring a 10-win team over the 5-7 Lions. Like usually in these types of games, Minnesota would have been favored by more than 3 points. Not the other way around. So yeah, that is kind of interesting. I'm kind of curious to know how Vegas decided to make Detroit the favorite for this game. So that is very interesting. So of course on this year, Minnesota, they're 4-1 on the road this year. Detroit is 3-4 at home. Like Minnesota's only one road loss this year was to the Eagles in week 2. So, of course, like I mentioned, I already went over the key players. Well, everyone except their new player, TJ Hawkinson, the former Lion, as this will be a revenge game, as this will be TJ's first game against his old team. Jesus Christ, how many fucking games are the Lions going to have this year where a former Lion is going to have a revenge game against the Lions? Jesus Christ, is everyone going to get their revenge? Jesus, holy cow. And of course, Hawkinson was mainly brought in because their original tight end, Irv Smith Jr., is on the IR with an ankle injury, and he may not be back until maybe the playoffs, so we'll have to see. Also, they're not without Cameron Dantzler, he's on the IR with an ankle injury too. And they're without Lewis Sign, their rookie safety, for probably the rest of the season, as he's on the IR for a lower leg injury. Of course, coach and staff remains the same as I went over in week 3 as well. We'll go over the rankings for the Vikings. So the Vikings offense is the 19th ranked offense in the league. They're a top 10 unit in the passing game in 10th, but they struggle in the running game as they're ranked 25th in the running game. So they've had some issues running the ball. Seems like Dalvin Cook is just having an off year this year. Which is very weird because Dalvin Cook has been a massive monster for the Vikings for the last couple years. And this year he's just having an off year. Hey, sometimes it happens. Sometimes you have good years. Sometimes you have bad years. Sometimes you're off your game. And now we get to the Vikings defense. And the Vikings defense is one of the worst defenses in the league. Even worse than the Lions. The Vikings defense is ranked 32nd. If anyone's wondering, Vikings are 32nd, Detroit is 31st. Just going to put that out there. The Vikings, they're the 32nd. They're the worst unit against the pass. They're 32nd against the pass. But they're mid-pack in the run game, ranked 16th against the run. So they just have issues in the passing game. So I think for the Lions, the keys to win this game is, just do what you did earlier in the year in week 3, but this time don't blow a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter. Like, we know what the Lions can do. They just need to finish the job this time because one of the main reasons, because to be honest, the Lions should have won that game in week 3. They should have. But I think the main reason they didn't was because that team was still young and learning how to finish games. And the last couple weeks, the Lions team has gotten better and better throughout the year. And they're slowly learning how to finish these games. I'll tell you right now, you put this current Lions team where they are right now, you put this team where they are right now, in the position they were in week 3, this team would have got the job done with the amount of experience they now have getting the job done in these kind of games. Like, this team is slowly learning how to finish games. But yeah, I think the main key is just rush to run the ball, feed it to Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. And then in the passing game, just try and get targets to Amon-Ra St. Brown, spread the ball to the tight ends. And I think this week the Lions need to get Jameson Williams more involved in the passing game. Like, I think the main reason Jameson wasn't really involved in that in the game against Jacksonville. And no, I'm not, well, the number one reason, I'm not going to say it's because it's Jacksonville. That's a fucking cop-out. I think the real reason was because, it was Jameson Williams' first game back since the national championship game in college, back when he was with Alabama, when he tore his ACL. He was coming off, he's also coming off a major ACL injury. And we all know ACL injuries are no laughing matter. So I feel like the Lions, they just mainly used him as a decoy on the field. And I think that decoy idea was just, for him to get his feet wet and just to get used to the NFL speeding game. But I feel like now that he's gotten a little used to it and got a taste of it, I think now is the time to get him more involved. Maybe have him get deep downfield so Jared Goff could throw some shots down there. And maybe prove to everyone that Goff isn't the check down magnet that we think he is. But yeah, I think this week one of the big keys for sure is the Lions need to have Jameson Williams get more involved in the passing game. Plus, one of the main differences between Week 3 and now for the Lions against the Vikings is that in Week 3, Lions didn't have Jameson Williams in there. They also didn't have James Houston in there as well, as Houston's become a beast too. As Houston's had the second most sacks by a rookie now so far this year at 3. Behind Hutchinson, with Hutchinson having the most out of all rookies with 6.5. So I think have Hutchinson try to get some pressure to Kirk Cousins and maybe have Houston get in there too. Because Houston, he's only played a small sample size in 2 games, but Houston's been very damn impressive. Like, so far, this draft class from Brad Holmes has been really fucking impressive. Like, nearly everyone on the class has nearly been a starter. Like, Kirby Joseph's been impressive. James Houston's been impressive in a small sample size. We've seen what Malcolm Rodriguez can do. Hutchinson's been performing as advertised. And, well, Chase Lucas, he's had some moments, too. Like, Josh Pascal, he's had a couple moments, too, but he's had issues staying healthy. I mean, Jameson Williams, well, we know what he can do. It's just time he needs to showcase it in the NFL, and show that speed he had in college. But yeah, I feel like this time, like I did say at the start of the year, the Lions would split the season series with the Vikings. The Week 3 game, that was the game I had the Vikings winning, and I had the Lions winning this one, and I'm staying with it. I say the Lions will win this game. Plus, keep this in mind. Dan Campbell is 3-0 against teams 5 or more games above 500. And since the Vikings are 10-2, that means they are, 8 games above 500. So I think a lot of signs point to the Lions getting the job done. And plus the Vikings got a lot of pressure this week because there are playoff implications on the line with this game. As the Minnesota Vikings, they can clinch the NFC North with a win. Like, effectively at this point in the year, any win from the Vikings would clinch the North for the Vikings. If the Lions lose any game from here on out, the Vikings can clinch the division too. So, honestly, I say let's play spoiler and make Minnesota have to wait another week. I say make Minnesota wait till Week 15 to lock up the North. Since Week 15, the Vikings are playing the Colts, so just delay what's inevitable, I guess. But yeah, I think the Lions can get the job done this time. Yeah, the Vikings have played some good football. Good chance the Vikings are more likely going to be the number 2 seed entering the playoffs in a couple weeks. Especially considering that you look at the NFC West, and the Buccaneers in the NFC South. Good chance that those 2 teams are battling for the 3rd seed, and the Vikings are just way far ahead. Don't think they can catch the Eagles for the number 1 seed. I think the Eagles are going to get the number 1 seed in the NFC. And I think the road to the Super Bowl this year goes through Philly. But yeah, I think the Lions get this job done. You know, keep in mind, around this time a year ago, when the Lions and the Vikings played in Detroit, this was around the time when Detroit got their first win of the season against Minnesota. And now Detroit's playing Minnesota a year later, with some potential playoff implications on the line. So I say, you know what, let's go out there, let's go get this win against Minnesota and split the season series. And deny the Vikings the season sweep and snap that broom in half. Look, I'll just say this here. If the Lions can get this win against Minnesota, then the chances to make the playoffs this year get even higher. So yeah, in terms of a score prediction, I'm going to go Detroit 22-19. I'm going to take the Lions plus the points. I'm going to take Detroit by 3 over Minnesota. I think it's going to be a very close game. But in the end, I feel like the Lions can close this one out on Minnesota this time. I think Detroit will not repeat I think Detroit will learn from their mistakes from Week 3. And I think they've gotten better since Week 3. And I think Detroit gets that win over Minnesota. And I think they get it 22-19. But yeah, and yes, I am very aware of what happened with EDP 445. I watched that live stream from Master at work last night. Like, that sick fuck never learns. Never learned his lesson. This is why I said we had to take care of the problem with him before. And we have to take matters in our own hands with EDP. Because I said if we don't, it's just going to get worse. Lo and behold, like all other sexual predators, he's acted again. EDP never learns. Because once a predator, always a predator. But anyway, fuck EDP. But let's go get this win against the Vikings. Let's go beat the Vikings and deny the season sweep. And make Minnesota have to wait another week for the NFC North. Since, yeah, it's pretty inevitable the Vikings win the North this week. Win the North this year. But I say let's make them wait another week. Make them wait till their game against Indy next week. But yeah, if the Lions can get this win, then I think the playoffs are very likely this year. But the Lions would still need a lot of things to go their way. Could happen, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with the Vikings the 49ers. Because the 49ers, they failed to get Baker Mayfield, so they're now down to Brock Purdy. You know, the Giants and Commanders both have rough schedules the rest of the year. You know, there's a good chance Seattle could sneak in and win the division with the 49ers' misfortunes right now. We'll have to see what happens there. But anyway, though, let's go get the win against Minnesota, and let's take this one game at a time. The Lions, playoffs are still a possibility, but let's just take it one game at a time. Beat Minnesota, and then we could possibly start looking at it. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say. I'm out.